I'm a 29-year-old woman living in a small, one-bedroom apartment in the city. It's not much, but it's mine. I've worked hard to build a life for myself after moving out for college and never looking back. While my family has always been a big part of my life, our dynamic has always felt unbalanced. My parents are the traditional type, and by traditional, I mean they value family loyalty over pretty much everything. Growing up, they never let me forget how important it was to pitch in, be there for each other, and put family first. To them, that meant doing whatever they needed, whenever they needed it. And they had a way of guilting me if I didn't immediately say yes to their requests. I've always been the reliable one, while my older sister, Anna, has been the golden child. She's 33, married, and has 3 kids under the age of 7. She lives in the same town as my parents, about a 10-minute drive from their house, which makes it easier for them to see her. And by see her, I mean they're basically raising her kids, half the time. Anna's life looks perfect from the outside. She's got the big house, the Instagram-worthy family, and the supportive husband. But it's clear she's struggling. Every time I visit, she looks like she hasn't slept in days. The kids are adorable but loud, chaotic, and constantly need something. My parents practically live at her house, cooking, cleaning, and babysitting whenever she asks. Over the past few months, my mom's been dropping hints about how hard it's been for them to keep up with Anna's needs. Your sister has so much on her plate, she'd say during our weekly phone calls. It's tough for us too, you know. We're not as young as we used to be. At first, I thought it was just her venting. Then came last Sunday. We were having lunch at my parents' house, me, Anna, her husband, the kids, and my parents. It was chaotic, as usual. My mom was in the kitchen, juggling 3 pots at once, while Anna tried to calm her youngest, who was screaming because his sandwich was cut the wrong way. My dad was sitting at the head of the table, scrolling on his phone like he didn't even notice the noise. Somewhere between the salad and the roast chicken, my mom turned to me and said, "We've been thinking, and we believe it's time for you to start helping out more with Anna's kids." At first, I thought she meant babysitting every once in a while. That's not unusual. But then she kept going. "You live alone, you're not tied down with a family of your own yet, and Anna could really use the help. It would make such a difference if you took them a few days a week." It was like the table went silent, even though the kids were still yelling about dessert. I stared at her, trying to process what she'd just said. My dad looked up from his phone and nodded, adding, "Family takes care of family. You know that." Anna wasn't even fazed. She just nodded along, like this had already been decided without me. Her husband kept his head down, focused on cutting up a chicken leg for their middle child, clearly staying out of it. I tried to laugh it off, saying something like, "Oh, I don't think my apartment is baby-proofed for all 3 of them." My mom smiled politely but didn't let it go. "You'll figure it out," she said. They'd love spending time with their auntie. For the rest of the meal, the conversation kept circling back to this plan of theirs. My mom even suggested I could rearrange my work schedule to accommodate school drop-offs and pickups. "Your job is flexible, isn't it?" she asked, as if she knew more about my career than I did. By the time dessert was served, I felt like I'd been ambushed. The worst part? They didn't ask if I wanted to help. It was like they assumed I didn't have a choice. My life, my time, my space was suddenly fair game. The drive back to my apartment was a blur. I couldn't shake the feeling that my family didn't see me as a person with my own life and goals. To them, I was just a backup plan, a safety net for when things got too hard for Anna. Over the next few days, the texts started rolling in. My mom sent me a list of the kids' school schedules, like I'd already agreed to this. Anna sent me tips on dealing with tantrums and keeping kids entertained without screens, as if I'd asked for advice. Even my dad chimed in with a forwarded article about the importance of family support. At work, I couldn't focus. My boss noticed when I missed a deadline for the first time in months. I started venting to my friends, hoping they'd have some magical solution. Most of them were horrified. "You need to set boundaries," one friend said. Another joked, "Post this on Reddit. They'll tell you to run for the hills." I haven't decided what to do yet, but one thing's clear. This isn't just about babysitting. It's about how my family sees me and whether I'm willing to let them keep treating me this way. Update 1. After that Sunday lunch, I did what any overwhelmed millennial might do. I turned to Reddit. I hesitated at first, but after rereading some of the texts my mom and sister had sent me, I knew I needed advice from people outside the situation. So I posted everything: the unasked for plan, the unsolicited parenting tips, and my growing fear that my family didn't see me as a person, just a resource. The responses were overwhelming. The post exploded overnight. I woke up to thousands of comments. Most were supportive, urging me to stand my ground and reminding me that it was okay to say no. A few suggested family therapy, yeah, like my parents would ever agree to that, and others shared their own stories of overbearing families. There were a handful of comments sympathizing with my parents and sister, but even those were drowned out by the sheer number of people telling me to protect my boundaries. Feeling a little braver, I decided to have a direct conversation with my parents. I called them the next evening. I figured a calm, straightforward talk was the best approach. I started by saying that I loved them and valued our family, but I couldn't take on the role they were asking of me. I explained that my work, my space, and my independence were important to me, and that this was simply too much. It didn't go well. My mom dismissed everything I said, claiming I was overreacting. She told me I didn't understand how much Anna was struggling and how much they, as grandparents, were doing. My dad chimed in, saying I was being selfish, and that I'd change my mind once I saw how much the kids need me. They spoke as though this wasn't up for debate. By the end of the call, I felt like I'd been talking to a brick wall. Later that night, Anna sent me a long text. She wrote about how hard it was to be a stay-at-home mom, how much she sacrificed for her kids, and how lucky I was to have a carefree life. She wrapped it up by accusing me of abandoning her and the family in their time of need. I ignored the text. A few days passed, and things were quiet, too quiet. Then, out of nowhere, my parents showed up at my apartment. No warning, no text, just a knock at the door. When I opened it, there they were, with all 3 of Anna's kids in tow. My mom smiled like this was a casual visit, while my dad ushered the kids inside, saying something about how they wanted to show me what it would be like. For the next hour, chaos reigned. The oldest was bored and kept whining about wanting to go home. The middle one decided my bookshelf was a jungle gym, pulling half the books onto the floor. The youngest, still in diapers, cried nonstop until my mom finally changed him. On my couch, by the way. I stood there, stunned, as my parents acted like this was normal. When I tried to tell them this wasn't okay, my dad brushed it off with a laugh, saying, "You'll get used to it." I didn't. After they finally corralled the kids and started packing up, I told them flat out not to do this again. I said I wasn't going to be roped into their plan, and showing up unannounced was crossing a line. My mom's face felt like I just told her I hated Christmas. My dad muttered something about ingratitude as they left, clearly offended. After they left, I felt drained and unsure about what to do next. A friend suggested seeing a therapist to help me navigate the situation, so I booked an appointment. In that session, the therapist helped me reframe the guilt I was feeling. She reminded me that boundaries aren't selfish, they're necessary. I left the appointment feeling more confident about my decision. At work, things started looking up too. My boss noticed I'd been stressed and pulled me aside to check in. When I told her a bit about what was going on, she was surprisingly understanding. She even offered to adjust my workload temporarily, giving me some breathing room to deal with my family drama. But my family wasn't done. The next day, I got an email from my parents. It was long, dramatic, and filled with phrases like, "We'll never forgive you if you turn your back on us, and you're breaking our hearts." It was clear they were doubling down. That same evening, Anna posted one of those vague statuses on Facebook. It's sad when people think they're too good to help family. You know who you are. A few extended family members commented with heart emojis and words of support, clearly aimed at her. By the weekend, my aunts and cousins were calling and texting, urging me to make peace with my parents. A couple even accused me of being selfish, saying things like family is all we have. Still, I stayed firm. Reddit continued to be my lifeline, and every update I shared there was met with an outpouring of encouragement. People reminded me that I wasn't alone and that it was okay to prioritize my own life. The silence from my parents after that email was deafening. They didn't call, didn't text. Part of me felt relieved, the other part couldn't help but feel guilty. I knew this wasn't over, but I was ready for whatever came next. My next move was to write them a heartfelt email, one last attempt to make them understand my side without creating more conflict. I hit send, hoping it would be enough.
Update 2. After days of overthinking, I sent the email. It was carefully worded, not too harsh, not too emotional. I explained that I loved my family but couldn't take on the role of a third parent for my nieces and nephews. I highlighted how much I respected the sacrifices my parents had made and how much I appreciated Anna's hard work as a mother. I also reiterated that my career and independence were important to me and that this decision wasn't coming from a place of selfishness, but necessity. After clicking send, there was nothing to do but wait. The silence was immediate. A full day went by without so much as a got your email message. Then another day. By the second night, I started questioning whether I'd gone too far. Had I permanently damaged my relationship with them? On the third day, Anna responded, and it wasn't pretty. Her email started with a long paragraph about how hard her life had been lately, juggling the kids and managing the house. She mentioned how disappointed she was in me for not stepping up when the family needed me most. Then she pivoted to an attack, accusing me of being selfish, ungrateful, and disrespectful to our parents. She made it clear she thought I had no real responsibilities compared to her, and that I was turning my back on the family. A few hours later, my parents followed up. Their email was calmer but no less guilt-inducing. They wrote that they were hurt and disappointed by my decision. My mom emphasized how much she and my dad had sacrificed to raise me, pointing out moments where they had gone without so I could succeed. They ended by saying I was misunderstanding their request and that I'd regret this decision one day. I barely had time to process those emails before the fallout began. Anna shared my email with our extended family, or at least her version of it. She framed the situation as though I had outright refused to help during a family crisis. The family group chat, which is usually filled with memes and photos of the kids, exploded. Aunts and cousins started posting passive-aggressive messages about some people forgetting where they came from and the importance of family. One of my aunts even shared an old family photo with the caption, "When we all stuck together no matter what." In the middle of all this chaos, I got a private message from a cousin I hadn't spoken to in years. He told me he'd gone through something similar with his parents and understood how hard it was to stand up for yourself. He encouraged me to stay firm and reminded me that just because people are family doesn't mean they're entitled to your time and energy. But the drama wasn't confined to group chats. Anna took it to Facebook. She posted a cryptic status. Some people think their career is more important than family. Sad to see who people really are. The comments were predictably one-sided, with relatives chiming in to agree and sympathize. A few even tagged me, making it impossible to ignore. The worst part was when a coworker casually brought it up at lunch. "Hey, I saw something weird on Facebook. Is everything okay with your family?" I had to awkwardly brush it off, but inside, I was fuming. Anna knew exactly what she was doing. Then came the family gathering. It was a birthday party for one of my nieces, and I'd agreed to go before all of this drama erupted. Canceling would have caused more problems, so I showed up, hoping to keep my head down. That didn't happen. About halfway through the party, Anna cornered me. In front of the entire living room, she started talking about how hard her life had been recently, emphasizing how much help she needed and how some people in the family weren't willing to step up. Everyone knew she was talking about me, When I tried to stay quiet, she turned to me directly and asked, "Don't you think family should come first?" Something snapped. I stood up and told her that I'd worked hard to build my life and that I wasn't obligated to sacrifice everything I'd worked for just because she and my parents decided I should. I pointed out that my independence wasn't a sign of selfishness and that it was unfair to expect me to drop everything for a situation I had no part in creating. By the time I finished, the room was dead silent. The reactions were mixed. A few cousins nodded in agreement. One aunt even muttered, "She's got a point." But my parents looked horrified. Anna stormed off to the kitchen, and my mom started crying, saying I was breaking up the family. My dad took her side, muttering about how I'd changed since moving to the city. They left the party early, taking Anna's kids with them. After the party, I felt like I was in a daze. The guilt was there, but so was a strange sense of relief. I posted another update on Reddit, sharing the fallout and asking for advice. Once again, the comments flooded in, assuring me I'd done the right thing. Now, my parents aren't speaking to me, and Anna has blocked me on Facebook. Half the family thinks I'm a villain. The other half is quietly siding with me. I'm not sure what's going to happen next, but I do know one thing. I'm not backing down. Update 3. After the fallout from the family gathering, my parents went completely silent. No texts, no calls, just radio silence. At first, it felt strange. I'd grown so used to my mom's weekly phone calls and random messages from my dad that the absence was noticeable. But as the days turned into weeks, I realized I was actually sleeping better and feeling less stressed. The quiet didn't last, though. Aunts and uncles started calling, one after another, all saying the same thing: "You need to apologize and make things right." Some were blunt, accusing me of being selfish, while others tried to guilt me by talking about how much my parents had done for me. One uncle even mentioned that family unity was more important than modern independence. Then, out of nowhere, my parents finally called. For a second, I thought they might be ready to reconcile. Instead, my dad's tone was sharp as he brought up the family will. He told me that if I didn't reconsider my stance and start helping out with Anna's kids, they would have no choice but to cut me out entirely. My mom chimed in, reminding me of all the financial help they'd given me during college, help they now seemed to be framing as a loan. It felt like a punch to the gut, but I didn't argue. Instead, I made a note to bring it up with my therapist, who later reinforced that this was just another form of manipulation. She reminded me that my parents' choices to help me in the past were theirs, not obligations I needed to repay for the rest of my life. Around this time, I got a call from a cousin I'm closer with. They mentioned, almost casually, that Anna's financial troubles weren't just from parenting expenses. Apparently, she'd been overspending on luxury items, designer handbags, expensive shoes, even a new car she couldn't really afford. My cousin said the family had been whispering about it for weeks, but no one wanted to confront Anna directly because, well, she's Anna. I didn't think much of it until the next family dinner. I wasn't there, but my cousin filled me in afterward. One of Anna's kids, bless her little heart, had a moment of unfiltered honesty at the table. Apparently, she told the room, "Mommy says she's broke because of her purses." My cousin said the room went completely silent, and Anna tried to laugh it off, but the damage was done. The news spread fast. A few aunts who had been supporting Anna's side started questioning things, asking why my parents had been so quick to rally behind her without looking deeper into her finances. My cousin said Anna's usual confidence seemed shaken at the next gathering, and some of the extended family weren't as warm toward her as usual. Despite all this, my parents doubled down. When I spoke to my mom briefly after this incident, she brushed off the idea that Anna had been irresponsible. "She's just going through a hard time," she said. "You don't understand how difficult it is to raise 3 kids." Meanwhile, things were finally looking up for me at work. I received a promotion that I'd been working toward for months. It came with a raise, more responsibility, and a lot of validation that my career path was the right one. I couldn't help but think about how differently my life would look if I'd caved to my family's demands. I shared the promotion news on my second Reddit update, which ended up going viral. Thousands of people commented, congratulating me and encouraging me to keep standing my ground. Some shared stories of going no contact with their own families, and others gave practical advice for handling guilt trips. The support was overwhelming, and it gave me the confidence to keep moving forward. As the weeks passed, Anna's golden child image started to crack. More relatives began noticing her entitlement and how much my parents seemed to bend over backward for her. A few even reached out to me privately, apologizing for pressuring me earlier. One cousin said they admired how I'd handled myself, and another shared that they'd always felt Anna was given preferential treatment. The final escalation came when my parents called again, this time almost pleading. My mom started crying, saying that I needed to be the bigger person and step up for the sake of the family. She talked about how much Anna was struggling and how they were getting older and couldn't keep doing everything. My dad stayed quiet for most of the call, but eventually said, "You're the only one who can help fix this." I calmly told them that I wasn't going to change my mind. I reminded them that I loved them but couldn't take on the role they wanted me to. The conversation ended abruptly, and I didn't hear from them again for a while. With the silence came clarity. For the first time, I realized how much of my life I'd spent trying to please my family, putting their needs above my own. I decided I wasn't going to do that anymore. I've worked too hard to let guilt and obligation dictate my choices. Some relatives have continued to support me, while others have distanced themselves. Anna, unsurprisingly, hasn't spoken to me directly since her public embarrassment, but I've heard from cousins that she's still complaining about me behind my back. For now, I'm focusing on my career, my friends, and the family members who genuinely care about me. I've stopped worrying about whether my parents will come around, and honestly, I'm okay if they don't.
Update 4. After my promotion, I decided to share a post on social media. It wasn't anything flashy, just a quick update to celebrate a milestone in my career. Hard work pays off, I wrote, along with a picture of my new office setup. The response from friends and coworkers was overwhelmingly positive. I thought it was a harmless update, but apparently my family didn't see it that way. Within hours, I started getting passive-aggressive texts from my mom. She framed them as congratulations, but couldn't resist adding remarks like, "It must be nice to only have to think about yourself, and maybe now you can use your success to support the family more." My dad didn't say anything directly, but my cousin told me he'd made a sarcastic comment about how I had plenty of time for work but not for what really matters. Anna, predictably, wasn't subtle. She posted a vague status about people flaunting their success while their family struggles, complete with a crying emoji and several likes from relatives. The comments were full of supportive messages about how she was the strongest person they knew and doing the best she could. I didn't respond, but the drama was hard to ignore. A week later, my parents called again, this time with what they probably thought was their trump card. They told me they couldn't support my decision to distance myself from the family any longer. If I didn't start stepping up, they said they'd have to cut ties with me completely. I knew it was an empty threat, but hearing it still stung. I calmly told them that I loved them, but wasn't going to change my mind. After that, they hung up, and I haven't heard from them since. Meanwhile, Anna's situation was getting worse. The financial strain was catching up to her, and even the relatives who had been on her side were starting to pull back. My cousin told me she'd recently asked one of our uncles for money to cover her mortgage, but he refused, pointing out that she wasn't exactly living within her means. Apparently, Anna didn't take it well and accused him of not understanding what it's like to have kids. Around this time, I got a surprising call from my estranged uncle. He's the black sheep of the family, someone who moved away years ago and only shows up for major events. I'd never been close to him, but he'd heard about the drama and wanted to check in. He told me about how he'd gone through something similar with my grandparents and how they'd also tried to guilt him into putting family above everything else. "Sometimes you have to choose yourself," he said. His words stuck with me, and for the first time in weeks, I felt a little lighter. Therapy also started feeling like less of a chore and more like a lifeline. During one session, my therapist helped me unpack years of guilt I'd been carrying. We talked about how I'd always been the responsible one and how my family had leaned on me in ways that weren't fair. By the end of the session, I felt like I was finally letting go of the pressure to meet their unrealistic expectations. When the next family gathering rolled around, a big anniversary party for my grandparents, I decided not to go. It wasn't an easy decision, but I knew being there would only lead to more drama. I sent a polite message wishing them a happy celebration and left it at that. My absence didn't go unnoticed, though. My mom sent me a guilt-laden text about how family isn't the same without everyone there, but I ignored it. Not long after, my parents tried a new tactic, a health scare. My mom called to say my dad had been feeling unwell and hinted that it might be serious. Concerned, I asked if they needed help finding a doctor or scheduling appointments, but she brushed it off, saying they just wanted me to come home and be there for them. I offered to support them in practical ways, but refused to drop everything and return to their terms. They weren't happy, but I didn't budge. During this time, I started leaning more on my chosen family, friends and supportive relatives who had shown up for me in ways my immediate family hadn't. I hosted a small dinner with my closest friends to celebrate my promotion, and it felt like a reminder that I didn't need to rely on people who didn't respect my boundaries. Then came Anna's meltdown. At another family gathering, she apparently lost it after someone asked about her financial troubles. She went on a rant about how hard her life was, blaming everyone from her husband to our parents for not doing enough to help her. A few relatives told me later that it was uncomfortable to watch, and some even left early. While all of this was happening, my career was thriving. I got another big project at work, and my boss praised me for stepping up. For the first time in a long time, I felt like my life was moving forward, without the weight of my family's expectations holding me back. Months passed without any significant contact from my parents or Anna. The silence wasn't as painful as I thought it would be, it was peaceful. The Reddit community continued to be a source of encouragement, and I updated them again, thanking them for helping me find the strength to stand up for myself. The family gossip has started to die down, and most relatives have stopped pressuring me. Anna, however, seems to be hitting rock bottom. Rumor has it, she's selling some of her luxury items to make ends meet, and she's finally scaling back on her spending. It's not exactly satisfying to hear, but it's a reminder that I made the right choice. Looking back, I'm proud of how far I've come. For the first time, I feel like I'm living my life for me, and that's a feeling I wouldn't trade for anything. Update 5. It's been a few months since I've had any meaningful contact with my parents or Anna. The silence, which initially felt jarring, has settled into something I didn't expect: peace. Without the constant guilt trips and drama, I've been able to focus on my career, my friends, and most importantly, myself. Of course, my parents weren't done trying to pull me back in. A couple of weeks ago, I got a text from my mom about my dad's health. She didn't provide any specifics, just enough to make me worry. I responded politely, asking if they needed help scheduling appointments or finding a home health aide. My mom replied that what my dad really needed was to see his family united again. It was clearly another attempt to guilt me. I repeated my offer to assist with logistics but didn't engage further. The conversation ended there. Meanwhile, word has spread through the family that Anna's financial situation is worse than anyone realized. She and her husband are downsizing their house, and their kids have been pulled from extracurricular activities. Despite this, Anna is still blaming me for not stepping in to help. My cousin told me she's been saying things like, "If only someone had supported us, things wouldn't have gotten this bad." She even implied that my refusal to help was affecting my parents' health, which felt like a low blow even for her. Interestingly, my parents seem to have shifted their focus. With me out of the picture, they've started leaning on other relatives for help. This has caused some friction, especially with those who were initially on their side. One aunt confided to me that she was tired of being dragged into Anna's problems. Another cousin mentioned that he'd been asked to contribute financially, but he refused, citing Anna's history of poor decisions. Amid all this, some extended family members have reached out to apologize for their earlier judgment. A few admitted they'd been quick to side with my parents and Anna because they didn't have the full story. Hearing this felt validating, especially after months of feeling like the family villain. My estranged uncle, who reached out a while back, has become an unlikely source of support. We've spoken a few times, and he shared more about his experience going no contact with our family years ago. He reminded me that it's not my job to fix everything or sacrifice my happiness for people who don't respect my boundaries. His perspective has been invaluable and helped me feel less alone in my decision. Then Anna made one last attempt to shame me publicly. She posted a long rant on Facebook, calling me heartless and accusing me of abandoning the family during their time of need. She didn't mention me by name, but it was obvious who she meant. This time, though, the response wasn't what she expected. Several family members chimed in, questioning why she was airing private issues on social media. A few even called her out directly, pointing out that her financial troubles were the result of her own choices, not anyone else's. The post was deleted within a day, but not before screenshots made the rounds. In therapy, I've had a major breakthrough. For years, I've carried the weight of trying to meet my family's expectations, always fearing their disappointment. My therapist helped me see that their approval isn't something I need to earn, and it's okay to prioritize my happiness. For the first time, I feel free of the guilt that's followed me for so long. Work has continued to be a bright spot in my life. Recently, I received an award for a project I led, and my boss made a point to acknowledge my contributions in front of the entire team. It was a moment of pure joy, a reminder of what I've been able to achieve by focusing on my goals. Then, out of the blue, my parents called. Their tone was noticeably softer. My mom admitted they might have been too forceful in their expectations, and my dad echoed her sentiment. While it wasn't an outright apology, it was the closest they'd come to acknowledging their behavior. I listened politely, but didn't let my guard down. After the call, I drafted a measured response, expressing love for them but reiterating that my boundaries hadn't changed. To celebrate how far I've come, I decided to host a dinner party with my closest friends and the relatives who've supported me throughout this ordeal. It wasn't anything extravagant, just good food, laughter, and the people who've been my true support system. Looking around the table that night, I felt a deep sense of gratitude for the family I've chosen. The final straw with Anna came a week later. She called me out of the blue, her tone frantic. She started blaming me for her problems again, saying her life was falling apart because I'd refused to help. I calmly listened until she paused, then hung up. There was nothing left to say. That moment felt like a turning point. I finally realized I didn't need to engage with toxic behavior anymore. Reflecting on everything, I'm proud of how far I've come. I've learned to stand up for myself, let go of guilt, and value my happiness above others' expectations. It hasn't been easy, but it's been worth it. To the Reddit community, thank you. Your support and advice helped me navigate one of the hardest decisions of my life. For the first time, I feel like I'm living a life that's truly my own.